Hey everybody, welcome to the Unsung Podcast. Today my guest is Mr. Dan Kostka, who I've known just about a year and a half. We met on the CM Calgary page. I had posted a little blurb about a book, a children's book I'd written, and we just started talking and hit it off. And then he helped me get my first book edited, publish my second book, and we've just been good friends and doing various projects together ever since. So Dan, welcome to my little show here.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Dave. Congratulations on the show so far. It's been awesome seeing your guests. You've been having some great conversations.
Thanks. It's fun. It's addicting. I love people are coming to me to share their stories that maybe we're suffering in silence. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit of everything. So books of hope. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is a new campaign just started in the last few weeks, and it's to help vulnerable and children and orphans in Tanzania. Um, and it's a powerful thing because what it does is allows authors of children's books to share their books with kids who really appreciate it and can use these books. But then it also gives them a chance for some promotion. So it's a win-win where the author ships the books to this NGO in Tanzania called Rising Hope Organization Tanzania. And it's run by Bakari Sosa. He's a primary school teacher in Tanzania who runs this NGO. And I've gotten to know him over the last few months. And I started out by shipping some of my books to him. And it was so wonderful to see the children, how happy they were to receive the books. And just knowing that people on the other side of the world are holding my book and then some of the books that I've published and written myself, but also, of course, your books, which we can talk about later, were among the ones that we sent. And it's just wonderful to see the kids have it. And I thought, you know what? There are probably a lot of other authors out there who'd like to also know that their books are being appreciated and used by kids who could really use them. And I thought, why not have a campaign that encourages other authors to do what you and I have done and send some books over there? And in exchange, the school or the NGO um, sends photos of the students with the books and even a personalized message from the students saying, thank you for these books. And then the author is free to share those photos and the video on their social media. And then the NGO Rising Hope Organization Tanzania shares the video and photos and also the campaign. I created a Facebook page for this campaign, Books for Hope. And there's also a page on the organization's website as well about it. And it's a very simple concept, right? Send your books to kids that can really use them, and in exchange, you get some promotion and you get to feel good about helping kids,
Man,
you
one of
know?
the coolest things, like, because talking with Becca as well through both, and just hearing some of the students send out a message to my daughter, just saying
Yeah,
because her picture was in the back of my book, and of course he told me they don't see many young girls over there that look like her, and
right.
it was just cool. Like
Yeah.
you'd think someone handed them like $1 million or keys to a new Ferrari. It's from this little book, this
Yeah.
little piece of our side of the world just meant so much to them. It's awesome to be a part of.
And just like you're promoting connections between people who've faced various kinds of personal struggles, I think it's a powerful thing to help form connections between people, yeah, with very different backgrounds. Of course, the economic situation, opportunities in a place like Tanzania is nothing like what we have here in Canada or the US. And so they're coming from a very different background, very different perspective, a very different, unfortunately, more limited range of opportunities in their lives, perhaps. And so to forge those connections between people who are very on the surface seem very different is a powerful thing. And there have been a few other authors who've already donated books as well. Um, there's a lady, Juanita Gandera, who's in the US and Texas, and she's a retired educator. And she's not only donated books, but I know she's gone to the trouble to coordinate a video connection with the students. So she's actually been able to talk to them live, which is can be a challenge with the time difference. But she wanted to have that connection. So that's wonderful. There's another award-winning teacher in Florida named Vincent Taylor who's sent books there. So it's starting to catch on. There are authors who are pitching in and participating. It's wonderful to see.
Well, one of the nice things too that you're a little humble about, but I'm going to mention because I think it's amazing. When I first talked to you about this school, I'm like, we both have daughters. Um,
Mm,
the fact that a simple pack of feminine products that we can get here for $15 is like almost $400 over there. And when that teacher told me that girls in his class, 12 to 13, that when
yeah.
they get their time of the month, they call in sick because they don't have the products. So tell us what you did with the Toastmasters fund, with how you helped the school out.
So the first thing I did was I shipped 20 books that I publish and I've written some of them, but I shipped those books in I guess it was in November. But then I wanted to do more, and I asked Bakari. He goes by the nickname Becca, so if the audience hears us refer to him as either Becca or Bakari, it's the same person. He's a wonderful man, so dedicated to the children that he teaches. If you can imagine a schoolroom where there's 200 children in grades 4, 5, and 6, and he somehow has the energy every day to be there for them and to teach this room of 200 people. It's amazing. So, anyways, after the initially sent the books, it was just so powerful and it meant so much to me to see the kids with the books that I asked Bakari, what else could we do to help? What else could you use? And he mentioned that, as you said, that getting sanitary products for these young girls is very important because they don't have access, especially the ones who live in smaller villages. They don't have access to these products. And they may miss school because of it. So it affects their education if they're too ashamed to go to school because it's their time of the month. So he mentioned that need, and I said, okay, well, I'll try to raise some funds for you. And so what I did was I posted on Facebook to see if friends and family would contribute. They did contribute several $100s, and I set a goal of approximately 750 Canadian or 700 Canadian or 600 Canadian was my goal. And uh, so several hundred was donated by friends and families. And then I belong to a Toastmasters club, Calgary Pace Setters, here in Calgary, Canada. And I did a presentation to the club members, thinking that they may donate and help me get to the goal. And they very generously donated. In fact, I ended up raising more than $700 in total, and I was able to send that to the school, to Bakari and the NGO, and that was wonderful. And that got me thinking, what more can I do? And that's what led me to think of Books for Hope.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, I've never met someone so grateful in all my years online.
Yes,
That man, like every message he sends is ended with God bless. I hope everything is well for you, even though he's struggling, and he's got all these worries about keeping his kids with supplies. His first thing he says is, "How are you doing? Like, how's everything for
that's right.
you?" It's very different. It's very nice.
It's wonderful. He's all about service, particularly to these children. But he, as you say, he shows such compassion and empathy for people like you and me who he's connected with. Anything I can do to help him on his mission, so to speak, does seem like a mission for him because it's so deeply, personal to him in terms of helping. It just means a lot.
Now, speaking of helping and service, you wrote a very special memoir about Ukraine.
Yes,
Tell us all about that.
sure. So, as many of your listeners may know, that this month is the 3-year anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I happened to be there at the time. My wife's from Slovakia. My father was originally from Slovakia. So we just happened to be there staying with my wife's family when the invasion happened in February of 2022. And like many people, I was watching the news coverage, and it's easy now. It's kind of we've gotten used to the idea that that Russia and Ukraine are fighting, that Russian forces are in Ukraine right now. But at the time, it's easy to forget how shocking it was at the time. Uh, for months, Russian forces had been near the border. Russia was saying it's just training exercises, that they had no intention to invade. And then suddenly, early morning of February 24th, 2022, they invaded. And here was a peaceful democratic country, without provocation. Suddenly, people are fleeing for their lives. And like many people, I was watching the coverage on television, including families being separated, fathers who had to stay to defend their country, having to say goodbye to their wives and small children, and with tears in their eyes. And I would have tears in my eyes as I watched this. And at the time, my daughter was my son, excuse me, yeah, my son was about 3.5, and my daughter was 6 months old at the time. So it just hit me even harder knowing what it would be like well, imagining what it would be like, not knowing, but imagining what it would be like to have to say goodbye to your children and your wife, and not knowing if you'll ever see them again. So that hit me really hard. And I, as I said, we were in Slovakia. We were on the western side of the country, so about 7 hours from the Ukrainian border, which is on the east side of Slovakia. They share about a 100-kilometer stretch, border. So I said to my wife, I was watching this coverage, and I said to my wife, if I didn't know you'd stop me, I'd suggest I would go to the border this weekend and bring donations like water and food and other supplies, and bring some refugees back if some of them want to come to the near the Slovak capital of Bratislava. And I didn't expect her to be thrilled with this idea of going to the other side of the country, where I'm not fluent in Slovak, so I'd be going to a part of the country where there aren't as many English speakers, uh, a place where we'd never been, uh, and I'd be going towards a war zone. So various reasons, and she'd be, having to take care of our small children. But the next day, I showed her again a video of families being separated, and told her I really want to do this. And she agreed, she said, if you're careful, you can go ahead and do it. And so I ended up doing 5 trips to the Ukrainian border, bringing a carload of supplies to a refugee camp that was near the border, and bringing refugees back to the Slovak capital, Bratislava. And I had some, very powerful um, conversations with the refugees, these mostly women and small children that were coming back. And I saw a lot of interesting things at the border in terms of how organizations were responding, in terms of how individuals like myself, who just took it upon themselves to do what they could, what they were doing. And I thought, after I'd done a couple of trips, I thought, maybe I should start recording my thoughts, taking notes, taking some photos, because this is a powerful experience for me. Maybe others will be inspired by it.
Hmm.
And so I ended up writing this book. Here's what it looks like. Um, so, Escape to Slovakia, 5 journeys from the Ukrainian border. And it, it meant a lot to me to capture this very powerful experience in my life, to capture it. So maybe one day my kids will read it, and others who've read it have told me that it was very eye-opening and inspiring to read about that experience. And so it's inspired me to continue to look for ways to help others, as you do every day, Dave, and as I'm sure many of your listeners do. You look for ways to help others, because I think life is about service to others. It's about connecting with others and trying to help those when you can.
You ever read that book back and like just remember things that have slipped your mind? Like, wow, like I can't even believe that happened.
I have, in when I've prepared presentations. I've done some presentations at libraries. I've done at least one presentation at my Toastmasters club about it. I'll be in March doing a presentation at a Rotary club here in Calgary, um, talking about this book or about my experiences 3 years ago. So when I've done that, I've then, of course, looked back at the book and the material to see what to focus on. And it's, yeah, I would encourage anyone, if you've had a very meaningful experience in your life, uh, maybe write about it. Maybe you won't ever publish it. Maybe you won't ever, publish a book. But writing about it and revisiting it, just kind of you understand what the experience meant to you, and it it helps you process it too. Because maybe there, especially if you've been through something traumatic, it just helps you put it into context and realize what it meant to you, and also you can find inspiration and like, oh yeah, I learned some lessons from this. It wasn't all bad. I gained some lessons from this experience, and talking about your experiences, like you do with your guests, Dave. Talking about your experiences can be very healing, as I'm sure you know in your own personal life, Dave.
Well, the thing that I like most, I think, well, with the book, the In the Heart of the Forest that I wrote, trying
Yeah.
to put out a few versions, and then you wanting to help more people. You're like, hey, do you mind if
Mm.
I have someone translate that to Ukrainian, and then we'll give it out to newcomers that come to Canada? For those that don't know, this book is about essentially my battle with PTSD and overcoming a fear in the eyes of a little fox. And to
Mm.
know that this book is now going in the hands of families that are probably terrified, like kids not knowing. Imagine waking up in a brand new country and like your life is just, or you hear a firework go off and all of a sudden you think you're back there. Just kids, these kids can have PTSD. Um,
Yeah,
so I mean, I didn't hesitate. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the Ukrainian version of my little book here?
absolutely. Well, it's interesting because we published it this past fall, and at the time there was no plan to do a Ukrainian version, and originally it was just planned to do the English version, and then we thought, oh yeah, we know somebody who could translate into Spanish. Wouldn't that be great to reach another audience? So then it was translated into Spanish. And then it occurred to me, I was actually talking to a bookstore in downtown Calgary, asking them about what kinds of books would be of interest to people. And they said, you know what, a book that was dual language, English and Ukrainian, would be good because we have so many refugees from Ukraine here who are now working on improving their English. It'd be wonderful to have a book that had English on one side with the translation of Ukrainian on the other. So if they're learning, they can compare and contrast the two, versions. So I thought, wonderful. How about we do a Ukrainian version of your book, right? A dual language version. And I reached out to a wonderful lady named Elena Datso, and there, since being back in Canada these past couple of years, I've hosted some Ukrainian families in my home, and a year and a half ago, I rented at a very cheap rate. We rented our home to a Ukrainian family who was refugee family, and while we were in Europe again, and we rented to them, and the wife is Elena, and I reached out to her, and we've stayed in touch since then. And I asked her if she would volunteer her time. So she did it completely without any compensation. She volunteered her time to translate your book, In the Heart of the Forest. And I was very happy over the past couple of months to be able to donate copies of that book. Elena and I went together to the Center for Newcomers in Northeast Calgary and donated 40 copies of the book, along with some other books that I've published, and knowing that they were going to get into the hands of newcomers. And it was just before Christmas, so that's wonderful. And then I donated another 40 copies of that book to a Ukrainian church here in Calgary. Again, because I asked them, how many newcomer families, like from Ukraine, do you have in your congregation? And they said about 40. And I was like, perfect. That's how many I have with me in my car. I'll give them to you. So it's wonderful to know that your book, which has been connecting and reaching people who are native English speakers, that it's also reaching newcomer families. Like you say, they've been through a very traumatic experience. When I was doing those 5 trips to the Ukrainian border, I think many of them were literally in shell shock because they had to flee their homes. Many of them, the very day of when the bombing started and the invasion started, they had to leave their homes, and they were how do you process that? At least, how do you, it's, you're leaving everything behind. You've put a few precious belongings into a couple of suitcases on wheels, and that's it. The rest, you don't know if that home is going to be there when you go back. You've left behind your friends, your job, everything. So I think many of them were in shock, but some of them wanted to connect with me and talk to me, and they wanted to ask, are Canadians supportive of Ukraine, and when do you think this will end? And I'm like, I'm no expert. I have no idea when it'll end, but hopefully soon. And here we are 3 years later, and it's still going on, and sadly.
That's crazy. So if people want to get involved with, first of all, with the Books for Hope, um, I'll put the link to the Facebook page in there. Is that, do you have a website up for it yet, or is that in the works, or what's the easiest way
Well,
for
what
people
we have is the Books for Hope page on Facebook, and then we have on the Rising Hope organization. Uh, excuse me. The We'll put up the link for the Rising Hope Organization Tanzania website. Um, it's I believe it's risinghopetanzania.org anyways. And so on there, there's a link right at the top to a page on the website just about this campaign. So Rising Hope Organization uh, Tanzania.org. So that's where the information is. But and obviously anyone who wants to make a donation.
Here we go.
So
Okay.
yeah, if anyone were to make a monetary donation, 100% of the donation would go towards things like sanitary pads for the girls, for the students. There's no administrative costs, with Rising Hope Tanzania. So
One other
lots of
question
ways
with
people
the
can
Books
help.
of Hope, if there's authors out there that want to send their books over, um, so they contact someone makes them aware of the cost, or the cost is covered, or how does that work?
Well, what we suggest is that we ask that authors send 5 copies of their book. And the reason I picked that number was I wanted it's more than just one copy, so a few copies can be distributed to the students. But I didn't want it to be so many copies that the shipping cost would be
Hmm.
prohibitive. And uh, so we asked the author to cover the shipping cost. Uh, and the address that they send it to, which is the primary school in Tanzania, where Becca works, they just simply ship it, their 5 copies, to the school, and then Becca will reach out to them and send them photos and video once the students have received the books.
No, Dan, something you know about Dan, he's the master of dad jokes. Um,
Ha!
I can always count on him for a good digger on the page that we met on the CM Calgary page. Um, Great dude. We've connected and become, you'll come out and we'll go for lunch or just talk about everything, and it's a really great connection. So, um, what's one takeaway you'd like anyone watching this just to know about you we haven't talked about?
Well, to know about me, hmm, good question. Well, something that's striking to me. So, when I was driving out to the Ukrainian border, I had this sense of mission and purpose that I'd rarely felt in my life, probably had never felt before in my life, where I felt like I was doing something very important, something that was completely aligned with my values. And even while I was doing these trips to the border, I was thinking to myself, how am I going to feel this again in the future? In other words, I was having a sense that when this is over, when I go back to Canada, back to my ordinary life, how am I going to have this sense of meaning and purpose again? So in other words, I was a little bit concerned that
Hmm.
that that I'm going to feel an absence, a lack, a vacuum in my life. And so I just encourage anyone that when you see hints of, like, when you get a sense of purpose and meaning, look for ways to find more of that. And it's usually about service to others. Again, it comes back to that. Find ways to help others, and then you'll have that sense of purpose and meaning. And when you find yourself down and you're focused a lot on your own problems, I found for myself that if I humbly look at the fact that of what my blessings are, but then look at others who are dealing with bigger challenges and see if I can help them a little bit, then that helps me. It takes a load off my mind and it helps me feel much better. So there's always people who are going through a bigger struggle than yourself that you can help in some small way. So so it has been, the last 3 years since that the experiences at the Ukrainian border, it's been a process of me finding ways to get that a bit of that feeling back of being on a mission, having a
For
sense of
sure.
purpose, putting my values into action. And I think you're seeing some hints of that in some of the stuff we've
Yeah.
talked about.
Well, one thing I bet that happens, I don't know, we're on this page called Calgary Roast and Toast. And I'm wondering if you're ever looking at that, looking at people bitching about being stuck on Deerfoot or, oh God, I've been in the Starbucks line for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
My food is cold. And then you're thinking to yourself, dude, I made 5 trips to the border of a war zone. Like, I could have, like, it's got to make you look at, petty thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we're all guilty of it. I'm certainly guilty of it too sometimes that
Oh,
I
yeah,
let trivial things bother me. I let personalities or people's quirks irritate me when in the scheme of things it doesn't matter, right? And yeah, it's good. I have a book I can look to and it reminds me, oh yeah, right. There are bigger things to worry about. And there are people, whether it's Ukrainian refugees or the people that you interview in your podcast or whatever, or Becca's students in Tanzania. The challenges there are people with much bigger challenges than many of us have to deal with, and um, if you want to have a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, look for others you can help.
beautiful. I've got one more question for you. You probably know what's coming. I know you've been watching my shows.
Oh yeah,
100-meter dash, walk, run, whatever you want to do. At the start line, there's a basket of pigeons. You have to pick up as many as you can. How many are left in your arms at the end of 100 meters?
you know what? I would say all of them because I would remind those pigeons they've got wings and they can fly themselves, and I'd say, you know what? Follow me, little pigeon friends, and we'll get there together.
I love it. That puts you in the lead, I gotta say. I don't know if that can be topped. Yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you over this last year and a half. I'm looking forward to helping with this Books of Hope however we can. I will fire all the links we talked about on the show in the description of every YouTube and all the podcasts that'll be on. So check it out. Reach out to Dan, send him a message. Maybe not. I don't think he's taking any new book ideas right now for submissions, but Dan, it was a pleasure having you on.
Great to be here. Awesome to see all of your episodes and an honor to be part of one of them.
Thanks, man. Have yourself an awesome day and check out all of our links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe.